The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Today's guest and their company are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial. So for the few people in town who do not know you, or do not know you well, what is your name? A little bit about yourself.
So my name is Doug Peters, and I have been the president and CEO of the Abilene Chamber of Commerce since November of 2015. So I'm in my 10th year in Abilene, 40th year in this field. Wow. I started in my hometown of Dayton, Ohio back in 1986. Have worked in 5 different communities, 3 of which were military communities. In 4 different states, and 10 years ago made my way to Texas, and they'll carry me out of this place in a box someday.
Really?
Love Abilene, love Texas.
What got you into the line of work of working with business or Chamber of Commerce?
Interesting story. So I was an art major in college.
Likely Joe.
Yeah. Much to the chagrin of my parents and the people who knew my parents. My father owned a moving and storage business in Ohio, and it was always sort of assumed that I would take that business over. And I worked in that business in the summers, and I didn't have any interest in doing that. Right. Not that art was going to be my vocation, but I had an interest in fine arts and art history and those kinds of things. Make a long story short, when it came time for me to decide what I was going to do with my future, my father fell ill. Passed away, sold the business, and he had been extremely active. Board member, had participated in a lot of different levels with my hometown chamber, the Dayton Ohio Chamber, which at that time was the 3rd largest chamber in the nation. Operated the Dayton Air and Trade Show in partnership with the Paris Air Show, the National Aviation Hall of Fame, because Dayton, Ohio is the home of the Wright brothers. Right. And all of that. Shortly after my dad passed away, the CEO of the Dayton Chamber, a guy that I will never forget and still admire, even though he has passed, called me and said, "Hey, I'm worried about you. I don't want your ribs to start showing. Why don't you come see if we can find something for you to do here?" And I had no idea what a Chamber of Commerce was. I knew that my dad went to a lot of chamber meetings and came home smelling like cheap cigars and booze, and I assumed it was some sort of mafia thing, sure. You know. So I went down and talked to them. They invited me to apply for a job to coordinate the Huffy Thunder Road Bike-a-thon. Huffy bicycles were manufactured in Dayton, Ohio, headquartered there, and left there being told I wasn't qualified to do that. So they had a backup plan, and that was to put me in their small business division. And I started there in '86 as a program coordinator, building education and training programs for the business community of Dayton, Ohio. Did that for a couple of years. Somebody had left the organization, so I got promoted. I think by default, they needed somebody to do a different job. Did that and kind of worked my way up to be the vice president of their small business division. Was there for about 7 years in total. My boss left there, my direct supervisor, to go to Indiana and run a small chamber about 45 minutes away. And he called me and said, "Hey, I need somebody to do for me here what you were doing for me in Dayton. Are you interested?" And I thought, sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. He left there a couple years later, went to McAllen, Texas to run the chamber, and I got promoted to the CEO role. I was maybe 28 years old, wet behind the ears, still didn't know what I was doing. But because of the nature, the absolute nature of a chamber, you're surrounded every day by the best and brightest of the business community. And it gave me a chance to learn from these people. And I've been in that titled role ever since, and can't imagine doing anything different. I've had people ask me, "When do you think you'll retire?" And I think, I don't think I ever will. I love getting up and going to work every day, surrounded by an incredibly talented and dedicated staff and the volunteers who drive the organization, and particularly in Abilene, the people who are committed to this community winning. And that's what differentiates Abilene from the other communities I've served. We all cheer for one another, and we all want Abilene to win, regardless of who gets the credit for it.
Yeah.
And that's just a good place to be.
It's amazing. For just people who don't understand what a chamber is or what it does, how does it fit into the local economy, politics, business community?
All those things.
Yeah, where does that kind of start? Where's that stem from?
Yeah, so what I tell people often is that, if not the chamber, then who? At our core, we are a business advocacy organization. We're the voice of business in the big country. We have a committed, high level and grassroots approach to ensuring that the regulatory and tax burden on the back of business is as business friendly as anywhere else on the planet, and then some, because we want to be the home of capital investment and job creation. When jobs are created, everybody has a chance to win, and that's what motivates me to do what I do every day with the people that I get to do it with. If you just kind of take a look at the chamber, that's what we do. We are here to create and ensure conditions are optimal for business in this community. But we do a lot of other things that contribute to that. So, for instance, we're responsible and have been, I think, since the creation of tourism in Abilene. We operate the Convention and Visitors Bureau in partnership with the city. And people would say, well, what does that have to do with business advocacy or driving the interest of business? If you look at the real beneficiaries of tourism, it's the small business community who get to feed visitors and sell things to visitors without the burden of having those visitors on our roads and in our schools. And everybody's welcome. I'm not suggesting that we only want to pick their pocket and send them home, but that's a unique opportunity. And I will tell you that Abilene, Texas, I think does it better than anybody else. And that's not because Doug Peters is a genius. It's because this community comes together and makes great things happen. But we do all that we do because in our view as an organization, it's not a top-down driven economy. It truly is a bottom-up driven and all across the board driven effort. What I mean by that is I believe, and I think the people who engage with us believe, that Abilene won't be good enough for any of us until it's good enough for all of us. So when you create a job, at whatever level that job is, it gives somebody an opportunity to either enter the ability to make money and support themselves and their families, or to move up. And that's really what it's all about. It's creating an opportunity. It's about ensuring that the product that we sell as ourselves, as our community, the development corporation may go out to try to recruit a company for capital investment, job creation. We want that product that they're selling to be optimum. And that's where we spend our time and effort.
Great. So when I think of chamber, I think of it from a person who's been in business for several years now, and the way that most businesses interact with you is mostly through kind of some of the initiatives that work for them, networking, connections, things like that. How do you think about the way and the ability that you have to foster relationships between businesses and networking?
Abilene is a unique place for a lot of different reasons, but what's not necessarily unique, and it's more human nature, is that people tend to do business with people they know and trust. And we give people the opportunity to do that, to build that level of knowledge, of knowing other people, and to build trust among the business community. So when we do networking events, we're not a networking organization. We're a business advocacy association of business. But that's a byproduct of what we do, because we're driven by the leadership of the investors in that effort. So our board, it's not me making all the top-level strategic decisions. It's my job to implement the things that are important to the people who are elected from among our membership to make those things happen. Being able to work with a board of directors that understands what we do, why we do it, why it matters, and then to be able to execute with a world-class team of trained professionals is really, I think, what makes us one of the top two performing chambers of commerce in the United States. Top 2% of all chambers,
Wow.
we fit in there because we do those things well.
Gotcha. Great. Um, another initiative that you guys do is kind of a leadership Abilene. It's a way to kind of foster some of the members of the community who are going to become the future leaders and the future members of you guys. What initiatives do you do to help with fostering that leadership?
So we really start across the board, and it's funny you asked that because just this week I've had a couple of people say, you had this Abilene Young Professional Program. We need an Abilene Old Professional Program, and I so badly want to say, well, that's the chamber, but it's not. If you look at the demographic of our membership, it is people from all levels of business, all walks of life, people who just have a genuine yearning for Abilene to be successful. And I think the interesting part of that is, regardless of what your leadership ability is, there's a place for people from the business community who understand how important the interest of business is to plug in and to become a part of what we're doing, whether it's through Abilene Young Professionals, which is a program that I'm happy to say is the largest, I think, in the state of Texas, larger than many chambers of commerce themselves, with over 600 members who are 40 years of age or younger. And it's not necessarily to get them together for social interaction. It's really to bring folks together and to give them a network that they never want to abandon or leave and go to a big metro. So when you build a circle of influence, there are a lot of great things that can come from that. We also, obviously, as you mentioned, the Leadership Abilene program. I can't, probably 1,500 leaders in this community, names that everybody knows, have come through that program dating back to the 80s, before I was ever in this business, and certainly before I was in Abilene, Texas. Every chamber I've worked for has had a leadership program, and none are as good as the one that exists in Abilene, Texas. Very thoughtful, driven by volunteers who are alumni of that, and they've just set out to create their own alumni association to continue that leadership development opportunity for everyone. So, and then, there's also this DIAS component, and I hope we talk more about that, but DIAS is in Abilene, Texas, because a group of people from the chamber saw a need to have a economically sustainable impact on the community, went out, raised a bunch of money, bought a bunch of land, went to Washington and asked for a military presence in Abilene, Texas, and got DIAS. That was almost 75 years ago. And we have never abandoned the commitment that we made. And that's because people who go through those programs and people who have that passion for our community understand not just the economic impact that DIAS has on Abilene, but that the people who make up DIAS, the people who wear the uniform, their families, the contractors, they're our neighbors. We go to church with them. We go to school with them. They live next door. They're Abilenians while they're here. And our hope is that their experience at DIAS is one that compels them to want to stay here after their service is complete. So at really every stage of the chamber, and it's not a graduated experience with the chamber, but at every level of all that we do, there is opportunity to lead. And what I love to tell people is, if you go to a big metro as a young person and you want to plug in, odds are you're going to be at a level where you're not making the decisions for the organizations you're interested in. In Abilene, Texas, we have people on our board in their 20s and 30s. The United Way is driven by a lot of young folks. All of those are great experiences that over time help to continue to push the interest of this community forward, and I think make it world class.
I think a lot of Abilene's initiatives are beginning to have this much younger generation
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of jumping into it and very much trying to, kind of assert themselves into their place of how can they benefit or how can they change Abilene. Since the Chamber has done such a good job of setting a table for these young professionals, young leaders, what would be advice that you have to them to, what's the best way they can interact with you? What's the best way that they can plug into the Chamber and make sure that they're really taking the benefits and the opportunities that are there that maybe they don't?
Show up, express interest. And I tell people, be careful because we'll make you tired. There are so many opportunities for people to engage in the work that we do, whether it is in our community development division. A lot of people, most notably recently, have an interest in urban revitalization. I've spent a large part of my career working in downtowns that were on a respirator, and it was a heavy lift to bring those downtowns back from the edge, if you will. Back in the late 60s, the advent of the suburban shopping mall really put the hurt on a lot of small urban areas. We had the benefit of having Judy Matthews and the Matthews family look after the interest of our downtown when it could have slipped off the cliff. I remember hearing stories of when downtown had buildings that had the windows boarded up, and the ones that we have now, very, very few, are slated for reinvestment. Um, but there are those kinds of opportunities. If somebody has a particular passion area, all they have to do is reach out to any of us, whether it's a board member, a staff member, me personally directly. And there's a meaningful place for people to plug in, and they don't have to immediately be a subject matter expert at anything because they're integrated into people who do what they do every day. They'll be brought along to a place where before long they'll be leading something. So that's why I say to people, be careful what you want to do, because we will flat wear you out. It is just a great place to do anything, whether it's the arts, whether it's military related with Dias, whether it's legislatively, people who love to talk with our elected officials about the impact of whatever thought is being considered legislatively, how that impacts business. There's a place for anybody from the business community to be a part of the effort.
Correct. What are you thinking of right now as the opportunities that Abilene has in front of itself right now, whether it be business, tourism?
Sure.
How are you thinking about what we need to be taking advantage of or what we need to be really paying attention to right now?
So that's a very timely question, and what I'll tell you is that everything we do is strategic, and I would also argue that what we're working on today has benefit for the community 10 or 25 years from now. So we're not working on today's things, we're working on the long-term things. For instance, when I first arrived here 10 years ago, I remember the city of Abilene approaching me. In fact, it was one of my interview stops. It was with the mayor, the city manager, and some other folks. And they said, we've been trying to get this downtown convention hotel for a long time. And we believe that something isn't clicking because we're not getting interest. So I said, give us, let me take a look at what you're sending out to the development community. And they gave me probably a 200 or 300 page document that would have just, by page 5, you're snoring.
Sure.
It was just a sleeper. And I thought, I don't think anybody's reading it. It was just a white paper on, government speak. And no offense, that's what our government partners do, and they do it very, very well. But it wasn't compelling enough. So I went back to them and said, I think what we need is a sizzle package. And they're like, what is that? And I said, why don't we encourage people to invest in a destination as an anchor and maybe put some visuals together so they can kind of see what we're talking about. And we did that. We paid for that privately as a partner. And that's really the role the Chamber plays. We're the private sector partner in a very strong public-private partnership. And that's really hard to say. Tongue twister. But when they come to the business community, we pull together the brain power of people who understand how markets work and how things get done from a private perspective, not all government driven, and take that private sector solution back to government and then work through the nuances to make sure that it's something that works for everybody. After we were able to help a little bit with that, um, there were 7 developers who immediately responded and said, we want to be a part of that. So here's where I'm going with all this. Um, Once we had a fish on the hook, so to speak, with an interested party to build this anchor hotel in the downtown, we said, how's the rest of this downtown going to coalesce? Do we want this catalytic project to dictate what downtown is going to look like and feel like and smell like and taste like? Or do we want downtown to sort of have its own plan and vision, and pathway forward, so that the hotel kind of falls into or integrates into that? So we brought 1,500 people from across this community together by reminding them that downtown is everybody's neighborhood. It doesn't matter where you live or where you work. At some point, you're coming downtown for government. You're coming downtown, in our case, Abilene, healthcare, which our health district is right on the edge of downtown. Education, whatever it is, you're passing through downtown. So everybody is a stakeholder. Those 1,500 people painted a vision that if you look out a window in downtown today, you see it come into life. And that's not because the chamber's a genius. It's because we convened the right people, anybody who wanted to have a voice, and said, how do you want this to work? And then we put a market-based approach so it didn't become a burden on the taxpayer in place. And the private sector has largely driven most of that. We've got an $86 million hotel project that we're very fortunate to have, that has about $6 or $8 million of risk to the local taxpayer. Think about that leverage. If you could take $8 and turn it into 86 without risk, that's pretty darn good. So, and I would tell you that catalytic project has caused so many other good things to happen in the downtown. But that's an example of the kind of role that we play with Dias. We've been looking after the interest of the B-1 bomber that we've been home to since the 80s. We want that airplane, even though it's tired and it's been worked hard, we want it to keep flying because the pilots, the maintainers, those are members of our community. The B-21, the next generation long-range strike bomber, we have worked hard in Washington as a military affairs council, as a chamber, to ensure that Abilene, Texas becomes home to that next generation. So when the B-1 is done and they retire it, there's that next generation right there to take its place. And that has, Dias pumps $1.5 million a day through our economy. Sometimes we may take that for granted, but the chamber has never walked away from the commitment that was made when those people that I mentioned went out, raised money privately, bought the land, we are as committed to that commitment today as we ever have been. And those stories go on and on and on. The zoo is here because the Abilene Chamber, long before I was ever here, said, you know what, we need some reasons for people to want to come here, and advocated and got behind that. I love listening to Jay Moore speak because he reminds us of where we came from. And in many of those stories, there is some contribution made by the Chamber of Commerce because of people like you who come into a room and say, what if? And invariably there's somebody who says, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then somebody says, but what if we did? And then they find a way to make it happen. It's really fun to watch. It's even more fun to be a small part of that. But it's incredibly rewarding to see this community benefit from those kinds of things. So we're a quiet leader. We don't stand in front of people and say, look what we did. The community gets to decide, those kinds of things, because the community is who this chamber is, and it's the people of the chamber who drive the work that we do.
So, what would be your Doug Peters what if? What would be the thing that you would hope that would grow in Abilene, or it's something that if you had a magic wand that you could kind of build that into something that's going to grow in the next 10 to 20 years? What would be that thing?
Well, I think you're going to see tremendous growth in Abilene,
Sure.
Texas, and ensuring that we're growing smart, growing the right way, using existing infrastructure where we can, which means a real focus on infill development. Um, I won't say it's easy, but it's more economically beneficial, in my view, to reuse existing infrastructure than to go to a green area outside of the community and pay to have infrastructure extended to those areas in order to make way for development and investment. So we have a real passion spot for using what we have and taking those areas that maybe have seen their best days past um, and putting them back into practical use in the community. Because when you do that, the people who are investors, the people who have lived in those areas of our community, they benefit. Um, so there are those kinds of things that we're focused on. But from a timing perspective, we have a division of our organization called the Abilene Regional Growth Alliance. And the Growth Alliance has done some tremendous work over the last 5 years, um, privately funded, although we do get support from the Development Corporation, which we're extremely grateful for. But the private sector, folks who are a part of that effort contribute to this focused approach to investment and opportunity for the community, whether it's downtown. The Growth Alliance helped with that. Even going as far as helping I think it was a $200,000 project to just bring all this together in the downtown and to set the table with a vision that the private sector could follow. Um, Dyess Air Force Base, all of the things that we're fortunate enough to be a small part of, all of those things sort of add up to tremendous opportunity for the people who live here. So 10 years from now, my hope is that every single person in this community who's been here for a long time, is new to the community, or is visiting and sees promise and wants to become a part of our community, they find a place for themselves here, because it truly is the people. If you go out on the street and say, hey, what do you like about Abilene? I bet you $1 somebody's going to say, it's the people. It really is the people. The people here are just unbelievable. And I've been, as I told you, in other communities, and all have good people, but not at the level and with the same mindset that Abilenians seem to have. I asked somebody early on in my time here, why is it that we just seem to set our minds to something and find a way to get it done? And they said, I think it's because as Abilenians, we believe we're just geographically isolated enough that nobody's coming to help us. So we just do it ourselves. And they're not kidding. That's exactly how Abilene operates. And I think that permeates out into the region. And we see that in those other communities around us. And we're happy when they reach out and say, hey, could you help us think about this? Because what happens out in the region impacts our community and their people, their citizens, their taxpayers, their workforce, their consumers. They all benefit from what we do. So we love the opportunity to work with anyone.
So, what are you currently doing to kind of help the Type 2 businesses, the places where people actually interact with Abilene, not the chains necessarily, but just
Sure.
Someone comes to this area, they're looking for their bookstore, they're looking for their restaurants, their things like that. What are you guys currently doing in order to make business easier for them? How to kind of help make sure that those businesses are succeeding when we are bringing in a lot of outside sources as
Sure.
well?
Well, so we're bringing in people to help make their bottom lines better. We're helping to create conditions where they're not constantly looking over their shoulder at new regulatory burden or increasing tax burden and those kinds of things. That's sort of the floor of what we do, if you will. But we're also bringing those people together so they can do business with themselves. We have at any given time 12 or 1,300 companies who are involved in the chamber. There are 2,200 members total of the chamber when you count those chamber members plus young professional members at 600 plus military affairs council members at nearly 300. You put all those folks together and that is one powerful voice of business. So those people who are out in the community running a business, they may never see or understand fully the work that we do, but they feel it at some point because what we do every day is ensure that their conditions are as positive and as favorable to their success as they can possibly be. And then we do all the other things. We do programming. We're working on a program right now that I'm very proud of with a couple of our member partners to help folks understand how they can utilize artificial intelligence to run a better business. And a lot of folks are experimenting with it, but there are things about AI that I don't understand. I mean, you probably figured out early in this conversation, I'm not the brightest guy in this room for sure, but I will tell you that there are people in this community who are incredibly smart. And when you leverage that sort of thought leadership to benefit this whole community, this business community, you can do amazing, powerful things. So specialized training, we through the Growth Alliance that I mentioned, are launching a private initiative called the Paradox Lab. And the Paradox Lab is where anybody who has a business idea, technology-driven business idea, can enter into this place and emerge on the backside of their experience there with a bona fide plan and ready to sell or go to the next level with it. And I have just done no justice to what that is, but I would encourage people to look into the Paradox Lab. Incredible opportunity, angel funding, like-minded people in a setting that can assist them through this shared mind work of developing those ideas. Just a great thing. Again, nobody knows that we're doing those things,
Right.
but if not the chamber, then who?
Right. Perfect. What is another one of the initiatives, or what maybe kind of comes to mind when you're thinking of something that the chamber is doing that you really believe deserves more attention than really what it's getting, or maybe they don't attribute it to the work that you guys are doing?
You know, that's hard for me to say because I'm not motivated by the, hey, look at what we've done.
Sure.
It's more about results and helping people to do better, everybody do better, economically, socially, whatever it is. So I will tell you there are areas of the chamber where I think everybody should be involved. One of those is military affairs. Great things are happening at Dyess Air Force Base, and our country is in a conflict, a couple of conflicts probably, at any given time. And people in the community don't realize that Dyess Air Force Base can't go to Washington and say, we need this. They need advocates on the ground from the community to do that for them. And that's really where the Military Affairs Council earns its keep. It's a volunteer-based, volunteer-driven membership organization, $100 a year. You can be a member of the military affairs effort, get invited onto the installation. We had a group of folks out there just a couple of weeks ago to watch the B-1s and the C-130s fly at night with some refreshments, and it was an incredible experience. And because folks may not know that that's available to them, they missed an opportunity to really integrate with our airmen and to see what those folks do every day in defense of our nation. And so those kinds of things are out there for people to be able to engage in and to become more integrated into the community, because that's really what, in my view, drives so many good things in Abilene.
Great. 5 to 10 years from now, if we're sitting back here again, what do you view as what would be a stronger version of Abilene than what we are seeing today?
A substantial housing supply. Somebody had to bring it up, might as well be me.
Sure.
We're in a fortunate place where housing is tight. There are communities all over the world that would love to be in the place that Abilene, Texas is, and it doesn't happen by accident. There are really hardworking, talented people involved in economic development, in local government, as a private sector supporter and cheerleader for those things. It's our job to take the challenges that come with growth and to help, not solve on our own, but to be a part of the solution that helps people to leverage those opportunities. When I think by all measures, we are currently in an economic boom time, right? There's so many good things going on with the expansion at Dias, the fairly new presence of AI and data centers, and all of those things that are out there. Before all that began to happen, we were in a housing deficit of roughly 5,000 units. When you add 17 or 18,000 transient workers, there's an instant need for additional places for those folks to hang their hat and to sleep and call home while they're in the community. We haven't even peaked yet. We will peak at about 27,000 people transient in the community next year in 2027. And then that will begin to sort of wane, and then you'll see this other growth bubble, both organically from the great work that's happening to grow the community economically, but also because of this added mission, this enhanced mission at Dias. We know housing stock is something that needs to be focused on. So we're working as the private sector partner in this public-private partnership to try to add as many layers to available housing on the supply side as we can, because it's a supply and demand issue. There's so much pressure on the housing market because of the demand. The only way to resolve it is with a number of different approaches to help resolve that and to add supply. So that's where we do a lot of the work that we do. It's taking a look at the challenges and create opportunities for the private sector to respond to those challenges so that we see them as opportunities for the long term. So 5 years from now, my hope is we're sitting here talking about the work that's been done to accommodate the growth that is occurring in our community today.
Very nice. For anyone who's just on the outside looking in at what you guys are doing, what do you think would be important about them getting involved at this point?
I don't think there's ever been a more important time to engage with the Abilene Chamber of Commerce, either as a volunteer, as a business member, as a supporter, as a sponsor. It's incredible exposure for an individual business, and it's evidenced all across everything we do. There are lots of things that we do that people may say, what does that have to do with me? Or I don't have time to participate. What I can tell you is that our chamber and the people who drive it, not just the staff, but the volunteer people from the business community, are always on duty. They're always looking ahead to, we better get ahead of this potential challenge and turn it into an opportunity. I've had people come to me and say, why are you not over at City Hall pounding your fist and demanding certain things for business? And the reason that we have the approach we have is because we work those things out before they become a problem. And that's where it's a great place for people to plug in. They can become part of that think process that allows us to resolve those potential challenges before they become problems, keep our community united rather than allowing issues to polarize us as a community. We're very active in Austin. People who have a particular passion for the legislative process, come aboard. We'd love to hear not only what's important to your business, but to have you physically with us when we're in Austin advocating for the interest of Dias. And so many little things that happen in this community, like keeping the state-supported living center open, comes because our chamber is testifying before the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. Nobody knows we do that, but when it was on the Sunset Commission list for closure, we reminded them that we have 2,000 of our most medically fragile citizens who live there, and oh, by the way, 1,500 or 2,000 jobs, all of which are high-level contributors to this community. Whether it is, sitting down and thinking about what's next for downtown Abilene, whether it is working with Lynn Barnett at the Abilene Cultural Affairs Council. Everybody loves children. Everybody, I think, loves to read. We are the storybook capital of America because our chamber is home to the Cultural Affairs Council and all the great work they do in arts and education. So, tons of places for people to plug in depending on what their passion points are, and all are welcome.
Very nice. And what would be the best way for people to connect with what you guys do, to
Sure.
follow what you're doing?
If they, I think it's fun to explore. Maybe I'm just a chamber nerd, but I enjoy just going through our website. If you go to AbileneChamber.com, you can go to GrowAbilene.com, which is our Growth Alliance website. VisitAbilene.com, which is our Visitors Bureau. You'll see all the things that we're doing. But if you go to the AbileneChamber.com website, you can join online. It's super easy, painless. And we'll bring you in. We'll do what we call Chamber in 60 to provide an orientation of how you can maximize your investment in the chamber, which, by the way, is unbelievably reasonably priced. So any business can afford to be a part of the effort. But just a reminder to people who may be listening, all the things that we think just happen in this community happen because somebody's paying attention to it and doing something about it. In many cases, not all, but in many cases, the people who are doing the things that most people think just happen is the Abilene Chamber of Commerce. And it's people like you who are doing it.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.